Get red. Two, two, two. Okay. Last session of the day before the drinks. Come on. Arthur, you're going to take a seat. Please take a seat. Where should I take it? Don't even touch it. Okay. People at the back. Take a seat. Okay.
Let's wait for Ella.
Yeah. We're waiting for Ella. We're going to wait just a few minutes. But I want to thank you to be here at the last session of today. It's going to be fun talking about, specifically, we arrive a bit late. Don't take me wrong. We always talk our asses off. And specifically, it's one of the topics that always comes last. We were discussing about it. There's like the cherry cake, like you got an entire event in which ideas come through that it is an opportunity to bring it up. And one of the last sessions is always finance. We forgot about finance. Well, let's put it there. Everybody will come. They always need money, right? We always need money. It's terrible. It is terrible. While we have to be creative when we talk about financing and how could we interconnect the process, our needs, our basic needs into this momentum that we are. Ayala. No, don't you worry. I was just opening. I was just like a comedy stand-up. Okay. And it is the moment in which we wanted to share this table, and I want to thank you again for the participation last minute. Am I presenting? Yes, you're on the website. But it's always good. For the context of today, there was already a conversation going on at our session. Okay, this more practical workshop on how to build a fund. We were talking about the intersection in between creativity and arts and the financing tools. It's like, they're two separate things. If we add a third factor, or even a fourth factor, and we talk about sustainability, eco-social approaches, and even aesthetics, what happens then? Which is the moment in which where we're going to find ourselves, and probably is what am I doing here, right? Each one of the guests that we have now, I'll do a very brief introduction, and they'll introduce their projects. And specifically, one of the cherries on top of the cake is a full report that it's our reference in the Pacesetter context that Martin and Arthur were in charge of. To give you a bit the approach, when we talk about financing and we finance the proposals and tools, we always say formal, informal, alternative, they've always been there, traditional, right? Martin knows a lot about funding, a lot, and 100 funds proposal. Let's see how it works out. When we're talking about inclusiveness of new funding ways or new funding perspectives, Arthur comes in with New Silk Roads, the support of different initiatives, his background historically on supporting that bottom ground initiative that somebody wouldn't even touch with a stick, and he goes for them. So, Ella, I have the pleasure that we coincide in this place, and we coincide in different ones, but we met to talk about crowdfunding. Which ways, as a creative space, as a pollinator in a rural area, how could we drive funding into our perspective, right? It's something, and even we met recently again, talking about policy at the European Rural Pact. How important those EU frameworks also comes into place. And it's not easy, and probably is where it might take with you. We meet in strange places. We meet in very strange places. And Janne, please allow me this opportunity to talk about social economy, that collective impulse. It is within tradition, is in within education, is in within, even you come from a rural area, right? You have a small village in the Basque Country. You come from a background with Mondragon. Okay, Mondragon, who, for the ones that you don't know it, is one of the biggest, hugest cooperatives in Spain and the world. It's 80,000 employments related to the Mondragon group, and they have different variety. So we're talking about a heavy weight of social economy, and you breed on it, I believe. But she's gone to Berlin, and she's going to tell us about it. I'm going to take advantage and talk about training an artist and how we could create those bridges within education, and understanding the social economy probably is a different perspective also that we have to bring into the social employment values. It's not the value of your company, because this is difficult to invest in a cooperative from start, you know, like, so it's a different bone to bite. And each one of you has a different perspective of your proposal. So I'll start over with Martin and Artur to present their report, and we'll go through a few questions that I want to open up, last moment of the night, and even we would like to address a few questions if you want to open to things that will emerge, for sure will emerge in this session. I'll drive a few questions. I don't want to talk myself as an Irishman. I'll try not to. There's no bell for me, this one. But I'll go with it. Resist. Anyway, give the floor and a warm welcome to this great two guys. And the stage is yours. Yeah.
The red light is on, yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Martijn Blom. If I need to kind of put my career in one sentence, I would say, like, I went from entrepreneur to investor, business angel, kind of like realizing that I made too little money to really be that, so I needed to collect money from other people, so I started to set up a fund, and actually the developing of these funds and kind of learning about impact investment funds brought me to where I am now, which is helping organizations to set up impact investment funds. Organizations want to set up impact investment funds, so I speak with a lot of foundations, a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals that have the ambition to set up an impact investment fund. And specifically, if an impact investment fund is in a geography or on a topic that is not common in the investment world, that the investment world wouldn't touch with a stick, as Mauricio said, then I'm getting awake. So I work really with the innovative startups of the financial market, kind of, right? So small funds, difficult markets, new topics, new ideas, see what comes out of that. One of the things that I kind of, being in this impact investment world, going to a lot of these conferences, hearing people talk on stage, talk about transformative change, the change that needs to happen, systems change, these topics. I always wondered, where is the cultural creative sector? They were not at our conferences. At our conferences were bankers, sometimes a politician, managers of big funds. And the more I heard them talk about system change, the more strange it became to me. And I was like, these guys are the system. So when they talk about systems change, they talk about changing themselves. But I can tell you, it was not what they were talking about. And I wondered where the creative sector was, the sector that is kind of, you know, educated and experienced in reimagining new futures, looking beyond what exists. And I was wondering, where are they? And I had conversations with that with a couple of foundations, and I remember one foundation, it kind of completely ticked. So we had good conversations with which was the Doen Foundation. The Doen Foundation in impact investing is one of the biggest organizations funding impact enterprises, but also NGOs, small organizations, and I think it's even worldwide one of the biggest. Third or fourth, I think it is. And they were kind of interested with it. And I remembered we had a couple of very engaging conversations, but as things go, right, you have other daily jobs, so you don't speak about it every day. And one day I was called to their office and like, come by, we need to continue that conversation. I was like, okay, it's a cool conversation to have. So I went there. And they said, like, the first question Marijn actually was that asked me, he said, like, where's the fund? And I was like, which fund? And he said, like, the impact fund in the creative sector that we talked about, where is it? I was like, I don't know. That's why we had the conversation. I never seen it. And he said, like, we need one. I was like, well, we don't have one. Strange conversation, and that went from A to B. And actually, I walked out of that office, and I had sold a feasibility study to find out where and whether and how an impact investment fund in the creative sector could be possible. And the moment I stepped outside of the office, I completely panicked, because I have two challenges. I know a lot about impact, I know a lot about impact funds, I know a lot about investment. I'm a very bad researcher. And two, I know nothing about the cultural sector. And I was like, how am I going to solve that? And I think it was within 5 minutes that I called Arthur. And we went on this journey. We decided to go on this journey together. I'd like to take you with me a little bit, and then I'll hand over to Arthur when we get to certain slides, to this research that we did, this feasibility study. So it's not there's some scientists probably in the room. It's not a scientific research. We're not promoting on this. We're not publishing in any, magazine or. It was really meant initially as an internal study. Is this possible for Doen? So we looked into this, what I said, right? The possibilities of establishing this impact fund. So first, we look, okay, so we talk about impact investment. Do we know what impact investment is? So we were looking at kind of the definitions of the GIN, which is the Global Impact Investment Network, and we kind of came to the following definition. So impact investment refers to investments that are made with the intention of generating a positive, measurable social and/or environmental impact alongside financial return. In another network that I work for, they kind of focus always on three elements. It's like, is it making a social or sustainable impact intentionally? So is the fund set up to make that impact? Is the impact that they make additionally? So does it add something to what's already being funded? Is it something new? Is it something extra? And is it measurable? Can you measure the impact that you actually make? I think it's important to know, because I think for a lot of people, the financial market is like one big, black capitalistic thing. But like this impact investment is a very small part of the money that is out there. It's like between 1% and 2%. And in the past years, what we have seen is that the amount, so the amount of money, the amount of dollars that is actually kind of going around in impact investment, that actually invest with an intentional impact, is growing year by year. It's already over the 1,000 billion, so it's a lot of money. And still, this percentage remains 1% to 2%, which is not a discussion, and something that we don't always are aware of and should worry us big time. Totally different discussion, not going into that right now. This is the market that includes, I don't know, solar panels, infrastructure, sustainable investments. It's including everything, and there's still only 1% to 2%. What I think is important, I always show this, I really hate this, the design of this, and I think we can do a lot better, but it's important to show that impact investment is like a spectrum. So there is no black and white. There is no investing and making enormous returns and investing and making no returns. There's like a whole spectrum in between. You have investors that say like, we don't need to make market rate returns. We are fine if the return is a bit lower than what market rate pays. There's investors that say like, as long as we can get our money back or make the money revolving, we are fine. We don't need a return on top of that. And there are people that actually manage to set up impact investment funds or claim to manage set up investment funds that can make market rate returns while making the impact. I think it's impact investment in the arts. It's not existing. That's what I was saying in the beginning when I start talking to Doon. That's not completely true, and it's kind of increasing. So over the years that I've been looking into it, I see more attention. So next week is Impact Week in Malmö, and for the 4th year in a row, we now have a session about impact investment in creativity and culture. I see all the people that kind of come to this conference, all these investors coming to this conference, and they can indicate what interests them. And like one of the 10 things they can indicate is creativity and culture. I would say about 1/3 of them indicates that is something that they are interested in. So that doesn't say that they will invest in it. That doesn't say, but it indicates that a lot of people are interested in it and learning from it, so there's a movement on the side. And we see that also with some of the funds that we see around. I think the Art Impact Fund from the UK, from Figurative, is one of the oldest impact funds that actually funds artists. Have a fund is actually an African fund that has really an interesting and innovative financial structure to support artists. They are far ahead of many fund initiatives or ideas in Europe. We have Upstart Collab with a creative economy fund in the US. And we have in Tonic, we have the Arts Working Group. So Tonic is a network of high net worth individuals investing with impact. And they have a separate group within their investor group that focuses on art and impact. Now I see this we were at a conference in Vienna a couple of weeks ago. Representatives of all 4 were there. So it's really a small world still. This is where I hand over. Arthur.
Thanks. So my name is Arthur Steiner. My background is actually more in arts and culture, as Martijn already said. And I was super happy to join you on that journey. And it's already like 1.5 year ago, or a year ago. And we started with actually interviewing a lot of people, like both investors as well as creative and cultural companies and like small initiatives. And one of the main things actually that we realized during all these interviews is like the big kind of gap between language, between these 2 different worlds, like the world of investment on the one hand and the world of culture and creativity on the other hand. Like sometimes we were in one meeting with like the EIB or the EIF talking about like all kinds of financial terms that I myself never heard of, and like an hour later we were talking with like a cultural creative company. So it was a kind of interesting experience, I would say. And like the main question that we had, of course, for Doon, is there a match between the world of culture and creativity, artistic entrepreneurship, and the world of investment? So we made this kind of slides to show also the differences that we came across. So in the conversations with the investors, it was usually about like demonstrability and measurability of impact. That was something that came back a lot. Well, in the world of creativity and culture, many people also emphasize this room for undefinedness, immeasurability, uncertainty, and play. So it's much more about like aspects like that. In the world of investment, and like the investors we spoke with was usually about like growth and scalability of companies, while actually in the world of culture and creativity, it was often emphasized that less is more, that smaller growing is flourishing, as we say in the Netherlands. And people said like it's more like a kind of boutique approach. It's not always about like rapid scaling. Of course, familiar in the world of investments, ventures, incubators, accelerators. While in the world of culture and creativity, as you know, like the majority of cultural and creative enterprises are like freelancers, like one-person companies. That's by far the majority in Europe when it comes to the cultural and the creative sector. Of course, there are also studios, cooperatives, foundations, but also a small group of like SMEs. World of investment, market-oriented business models, product market fit, these were the terms. Well, in the culture and creativity, it was usually about expanding the cultural commons. So what is the cultural commons? That's exactly the space that is like in between, you know, like the market and the government. You know, it's the civic space where a lot of things are happening and where most of the cultural and creative work is being done. And the world of investment, they usually refer to innovation. That was one of the key terms that we usually heard, like producing new solutions, new innovations that would solve the pressing problems in the world. What was in culture and creativity? Imagination is not about producing new innovations, but about producing new perspectives and ways of being affected. So it's about like, yeah, almost like the first thing I learned in art history when I was studying it. It's like that whenever you look at an artwork, you can maybe 10 or 20 years later get a new perspective from it in a new situation. So that was for us like the big kind of like gap. So the question is, can there be a match? So that was the difficult assignment we had for Doen. And we think that both worlds can learn a lot from each other, but it requires an open mind. Culture, impact, profit. That was like the 3 domains that we looked at. Can there be organizations, I don't know if you can see it in the blue circles on the slide, but can there be ventures, cultural organizations that combine 3 elements, that combine culture and creativity, that have like a transformative social impact, and that have a solid business model? Yeah, this is, I think, yeah, this is better, yeah. And the question is like, I mean, culture and creativity and transformative impact, that's kind of easy, right? Like there are so many festivals, human rights festivals, like cultural creative projects that have a fantastic transformative impact and that are artistically super exciting, but they don't have the commercial or the revenue model. And of course, there is like a lot in the 2 circles at the bottom, like culture and creativity and solid business model, you know, like there's the commercial art market, there's a lot happening in entertainment and so on. But the 3, and I want to ask each of you, can you think of like a venture or an initiative that combines the 3? It's actually, it sounds maybe easy, but it's actually a quite difficult question. Which are these organizations? So Martijn and I were often telling to ourselves, like, it's almost like we're like looking for like this pearl diving, you know, like where is this organization, you know, because it was a quite difficult assignment for Doen. In the end, we came up with some focal areas. I'm going to go quickly through them that we identified as possible funds that Doen could set up in the cultural and creative sector. The first one, and it's the most important one and was referred to the most often, is spaces. So an impact fund for the cultural and creative sector could actually fund and support cultural spaces. Think about like creative hubs, ateliers, rehearsal spaces, open air cinemas, sculpture gardens, and so on. And actually in these spaces, it's quite possible for impact investors to be involved with like other financial products than like general grant funding. So you can think about loans or redeemable equity can be issued for purchasing or renovating the properties. And the most important thing, to bring them into collective ownership within the sector. So like to avoid this kind of model of gentrification and investors being involved, but like a model where over time, like the cultural and creative, the occupants of these spaces become like co-owners of the space. Secondly, cultural and productions and expression. We see a lot of possibilities for an impact investment fund that support the realization of high impact cultural productions. Think about like film, you know, like documentaries, performances even, that have a high impact, that are, you know, working with sensitive topics, that are doing forensic, that are exposing things. And you can think about like various financial products that impact investors offer, such as pre-financing, bridge capital, revenue-based finance, which is basically different financial models that provide like some form of capital in the form of a loan, pre-production, and through the kind of sales, for example, if it's a game, or through the kind of ticket sales for the theater show, can be paid back to the investor. Design materials and crafts, new materials and crafts, like this was a category that we spoke with quite a lot of people. There are all kinds of new innovations with new materials, with wool, with like fungi, mycelium, algae, and so on. And actually, there are quite some interesting possibilities for production and cultural impact funds that combine a kind of R&D approach with grants and with like possible venture capital for spin-offs. Ethical fashion is a big one, of course. I'm not going to go like deep into it because it's an entire world. But like there are quite a lot of ethical fashion brands around that are deeply rooted in subcultures, intertwined with identity, with lifestyle, with community, and that have these circular business models, you know, like. And there are quite some examples that we spoke with, like in the Netherlands, like brands like Pata, you know, like deeply rooted in a specific neighborhood, like having big impact like in the specific communities, and then also manage to scale like globally even. And like these ventures, they could benefit actually from venture capital. Lifestyle, diversity and inclusion is our last category. Actually, what was one of the surprising insights after doing all this research is that we found that there is a specific group of entrepreneurs that is rooted in post-colonial migration, that is rooted in diasporic cultural production, that are usually entrepreneurs of color in the Netherlands, that are setting up like ventures in nightlife, in design, in fashion and film, that usually felt out of the traditional subsidy system and have a kind of entrepreneurial energy. Yeah, that was fantastic and actually a surprise out of our research. So we made it a specific category to emphasize actually that quite a lot of like the ventures where the culture, impact, profit is united are actually by entrepreneurs with a migration background or people of color. So lastly, some of the commonalities, insights, and we took some of the terminology of Florian and of Pacesetters here. No silo thinkers. Many of these entrepreneurs not looking into traditional like boundaries of theater, of like visual arts, of like music, but like combining different industries. No solo actors, usually like not like this kind of hero entrepreneur, like, you know, like that is celebrated in the startup culture, but usually it was like collectives and more cooperative forms of entrepreneurship where there are like creatives involved, business people involved and so on. Hybrid business models, usually different revenue streams. Sometimes people would have a festival and an online sneaker shop, and at the same time do consultancy services, for example. So many different revenue streams, not like one with the focus, multiple impact dimensions, as I said, like from diversity and inclusion to climate, to human rights, to like freedom and democracy in Europe. Entrepreneurs of color, as I mentioned, and alternative scalability, not looking into this kind of hockey stick kind of startup culture, but like, yeah, looking at smaller, growing, but flourishing. This is the study. It's online at Doen, and this is where you can find it. So if you're interested, get in touch. Thanks. Thanks.
So, Ella, now's the moment.
Hi, hello.
Because we've met with a very radical manifesto at the time, especially connecting to this part of how spaces, community, values come in. Explain us a bit about your story and your trajectory, because I met you once, ages ago, with a completely different perspective with rural radicals at the time, and I know you've got new stuff coming up.
Yes, yes. Well, let's see. I actually have a background in the culture and creative industries already for 20 years, also internationally. And always focused on creative spaces, on the buildings. That's also a personal interest of mine. And now, for the last few years, I've been building Rural Radicals, which is now officially an NGO, where we actually focus on policy, people, and purpose. And within the NGO, we do advocacy. So yes, we are part of the Rural Pact. And on this policy level, we see, actually some movement as well. So there's some movement on the policy level, but also on the money level, let's say, the interest for these cultural creative industries. And obviously from a individual perspective, people, when I relate to the countryside, people want to connect more with the crafts and the culture, etc. That's why they have the interest also to move there and act, or let's say to act upon these interests within the environment of nature. But to come back to the Rural Pact, what you see now, a lot of rural policies in all the countries, they are based on agriculture. It's all about agriculture. But now there is a consensus that rural development is more than just agriculture. It's also about socioeconomic and cultural developments. The Netherlands, for example, is now reviewing their rural policy for the whole nation, and this is happening in other countries as well. So that's very interesting on a policy level what's going on, and this is what we follow closely. But with Rural Radicals, we also connect people, organize different knowledge exchange programs. I was recently in Portugal, but I also did some work in South Tyrol, various rural areas. But always with a building focus, and that building focus also comes from the idea that when you look from an investment perspective, having a building obviously is leverage. So I thought that's maybe a smart way to go about it and to attract money and not be dependent on this project's finances. So that's what we do with the NGO, but now I'm part of the EIT KIC startup incubator. Where I'm being forced. No, it's one of the criteria that I set up a for-profit company or a company. So that's what I'm building now, and that company will really, navigate between the four target groups what I mentioned before. So local governments, the creative entrepreneurs that want to start the project in the countryside, building owners, for example, can be private or public that have a building and would like to transform it into some creative hub or whatsoever, but don't know how or and then the fourth is the investors. So that's with the company we want to build bridges between those four groups with the goal of helping as many of these spaces to thrive within the countryside, to contribute to rural regeneration and local economy, etc., etc.
Because you worked in rural areas and you know that space, it's good. There's always something. Even in the urban areas, we know reindustrializing opens up an entire Pandora box in many cities. But gentrification comes in the cities when we talk about creative spaces and revitalization of certain neighborhoods that were more cheap and accessible. When we're talking about rural, it's not the same conversation. Because we're talking about probably that scarcity of resources in a way when we're talking about services, access to finance, even the policy side, we're considered sometimes remote and marginal areas. How does that affect your initiative, or how can you try to tackle it? Because you've been showing already those little tips, where you could work, who you are aligned with, and what's your take and what do you bring in?
You mean on the gentrification aspect of rural
the
areas?
the rural aspect of the rural, the lack of resources is a major burden.
Yeah.
It's not that easy to get a grant, knowing that your impact is going to be in your territory. But you've seen a lot of initiatives thrive in rural. What is which you believe could be the key of that success and your success?
Yeah. First, let me maybe also address that I also do some urban work still. And actually, I do a feasibility study for the municipality of Amsterdam on setting up a social real estate fund. This, of course, is within the urban context, which is much different. But there, when it comes to financing these places, you enter you face the same difficulties. That is okay. Most of these spaces, they have almost no return on investment. So why is it interesting for investors? The investors are, we interviewed a lot of them, big real estate companies, etc. They are interested, but they say we cannot go for zero return on investment. It needs to be at least 1.5 or 2%. What is it, the bank? You know that much better. The bank interest rate. And so, but moving to the countryside, then it becomes even more difficult, because in the city you can say, okay, you have a creative space, you have people actually that will come, so you have a guarantee of revenue whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, I don't have an answer to it. I mean, the places that I visited, they are, I mean, thriving in a way that they're making a lot of impact. And when you visit them, you're like blown away. I can imagine with Genau Geziel, you know, it's the same, but struggling because of the lack of resources. And therefore, I work on these different levels, because we need both the advocacy on the policy level and the visibility, also what we spoke about in the session before. I think what is happening, so with investments, the sustainability sector is kind of covered, okay? Everybody's investing in solar panels and everything that has to do with sustainability. Social enterprises also kind of covered, that was with the social entrepreneurship and, you know, investing in brands from kids made in Africa or something like that. That's also quite already on the map. But the culture creative industries is the last one, I would say, the last Mohican to find, to build bridges for. And so, yeah, I don't have an answer to it. I can just say that I'm working on it, and like we all are.
Well, thanks a lot. And especially probably the environment and the differences in between rural and urban. And you've done that trip of urban and rural. Goes to you, because you coming from a small village, transforming yourself, going and moving to a bigger city in this case. You don't bring that, you bring more the social component or the community side, especially with a different type of economy that we're sort of looking at and tackling. Could you explain a bit your story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so I also come from the arts. So I studied art, and I was this kind of kid that dreamed of becoming an artist. I remember the first day of the university, one of the professors said, out of the 100 people you are here, only one will become an artist. Mm-hmm. And I have this naive idea that I will be that one. No, but I think that everyone was thinking that. But then I started to see how the art world worked, and I discovered that I won't be that one. We are a lot of people, even though I come from the Basque region, where it's a wealthy region, we have a lot of public funding for the arts, still it's very, very difficult. So I started to see that we needed different strategies to be able to work on the arts and have sustainable lives, because we cannot talk about sustainability but have unsustainable lives ourselves. So as I said, I'm from the Basque region, where the cooperative movement is huge. For a lot of people, maybe from other countries, it's surprising to know that one of the most common supermarkets we go to is a cooperative. But for us, it's that common that we don't consider that it's a cooperative. So I started to realize about the importance of the cooperative movement when I was quite old, after the university. And then I have this idea of, okay, what if we mix the learnings from Mondragon with the knowledge that we have from the arts? What can it happen? And another layer, it's the entrepreneurship education. So also there is a lot of background in Mondragon of training entrepreneurs in social and solidarity economy to create challenge-based and project-based projects that have a real impact on the community, and that they have a sustainable business model. So they are not thought as a charity, but they are thought as a business model that can benefit the community and that they can sustain in time. So I was very inspired by that model, and I asked, does it exist anything like this but in the arts? And one of the founders, he said, no, but if you want, we can create it. So I was there calling him almost every day, like, let's do it. And it was almost 6 years ago that we started to implement this art and culture idea into the faculty of social entrepreneurship in Mondragon, and we started to work on this process of what they were saying, how we merge the concepts, how we do this translation process, which are the expectations we had towards those entrepreneurs, which are the case studies we bring. And we have started to work a lot on these methodologies, on how we could train artists and cultural workers in entrepreneurship education from the perspective of social and solidarity economy.
Yeah, but when we talk about when we talk about social and solidarity economy, we're talking about many times it relates to sometimes non-profit, driven by impact, driven by a dream of collectiveness. That I must give you a bit of context, though. Spain, and especially with the Basque Country, bear with me a minute. There's 3 territories in which industrialization went hard. It was really hard from historical moments. You have Catalonia, you have the Basque Country, and Andalusia with the workforce that was already in the different lands and territories. They're extremely strong in the comparatives movement. But in the Basque Country, they made it a strategic decision for the development, equal development of an entire region. And this is where Mondragon comes in, being one of the major groups. When we talk about regions and territorial development through arts and culture, and even a certain type of economy and an approach to an economy, we know well that the Basque Country is driven by impact somehow, even in their policies, their economy, their structure, their spaces and their identity, even a very strange sustainability sort of approach, because they're the Basque, right? But how do you transfer it to your European context? In your experience, especially in an urban area in which that collectiveness, it is there, yes or no?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I think that we can learn from both sides, because the Basque Country has been very innovative regarding everything that you mentioned, but still we have been historically a very homogeneous society. And nowadays we are having more migrant people, more diversities when it comes to gender expression, when it comes to beliefs, religion, political identities. And I think that until now the cooperative movement has been very established on very similar ideas, and the case of Berlin, for example, it's the opposite. No, there is a lot of diversity, a lot of people, and I think that we have so much things to learn from there to bring it to the Basque society, because we are changing as a society, and the cooperative movement was built on those ideals 70, 80 years ago. So I think we still need to look at the social and solidarity economy with those critical perspectives, and don't lose this sense of what's going on in other bigger regions or areas.
Because one of the, probably what joins us all together is that transversal approach towards funding, towards culture, rural, radicals, and that social component. Let me drive a small reflection on the power of data and impact, on economical impact. We may question which are the parameters. I'm going to give you 3 figures, okay? 3 figures for the context of Spain, and to give you a bit of scale. Which is the GDP for culture? Which is the GDP for social economy? And which is the GDP for football, okay, for the football industry, okay? One is 10%, okay, I'm gonna go for the big one, 10%. The other one is 1.8, and the other one is 1.4. Guess. Which is which? Social economy? 10%. She's betting high, yeah.
I don't want to say football, I cannot imagine.
Okay. Good. I know, but that's the part more participatory. What you guess would be, come on, let's go. What you choose, each one and choose one. It's 1.8, 1.4, what would you guess it is?
Tennis culture.
Tennis culture.
And 1.4 is football.
1.4 is football, okay. You know it.
No, I don't know.
Okay, don't worry. Okay, come on, let's go for, I'll take the football one, I'm sorry. What would you think? This is for the audience participation. What would you think? Guess. 10% football. 10% football. 10% football. Yeah, it's rising. My goodness, 10% football. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah,
It sounds a lot, right? It is a lot. Okay, let's clear out. This is where impact comes in. Our perception of value, which is more valuable for our economy, for our proposal. 10%, ladies and gentlemen, in Spain is social economy, associations, foundations, and cooperatives. Okay, the second one that we were doubting. Okay, 1.8, 1.4. Sorry to say, 1.4, it's football. But 1.8, it's culture. And we say, damn, so little? So little? So probably it will be the last question I would like to drive to you is, how could we change that perception on value, on the fund? Which types of funds do we believe? Which type of approach or storytelling we may need to change? Or what you think the narratives, especially when talking about social economy, could be? So I'll open up to whoever wants to jump into that one. Yeah, well, super.
So here you already see, so the 10% is the social economy, and then...
I must say that it's rising up to 11%,
Oh, really?
thanks to the European Next Generation funds. But I won't say it very loud.
So yes, how can we bring culture up, right? But if you also look at companies, for example, they have their corporate social responsibility. As a financial instrument, you have social bonds. So the social element is covered. So how can we bring the word culture actually in that language? And that, I think that's a mission for all of us to work on that.
Okay, you go for it? Aye.
Why I thought it was 10% is depends on what you define as the cultural and creative sector. But the creative sector as a whole is for sure bigger than 1.4, 1.8 already.
Yeah, there we go.
100% sure. What the challenge is with this narrative is that we're still measuring it in GDP, and I don't think that's the thing that we want to do. I think we want to get it at the level of football, like in the impact that it has in society, because football is 1.4, and everybody thinks it's the biggest, and we think it's the biggest because it's in the news and people are interested in it, and there's people making a lot of money in it, and it's on all the news. So even if we bring culture down from 1.8 to 1.4, but we can have the same impact in society as football, I would be just as happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and there are many anecdotes. No, I mean, I had I had a dinner with the director of Creative UK. And after a few beers, she said, "Okay, if we take out the games industry, we would also be at 1 or 2%, no? Or the software and digital industry." So this is just a matter. I mean, this is not only ideology. This is also what is intended. So I think we should not only question how impact and value is assigned. No, we should also question what constitutes impact and value. And in the context of Pacesetters, I mean, it was one of our tasks in the very beginning of the project, and we just published it online, and I think we also printed it. We developed this kind of compass of advanced practices, which we used in order to rethink And this is properly informed by, I mean, kind of cutting-edge economic debate, yeah, to rethink these concepts of impact and value. And we came up with a rather I think rather provocative proposal, and I would be interested in what you think about it. So we say impact is excess of value. It is something that is more than what you expect, because especially in the field of art and culture, if things are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, they're not considered very much impactful. No, there needs to be a surprise. Creativity is always about a surprise effect. No, you can't measure or calculate it in advance. No, and value we defined as an inversion or reversion of otherwise instrumental relationships. Because again, in art and culture, this is really specific to our sector, if we only serve a certain purpose, this will not be considered very valuable. It might be considered very instrumental or very helpful, no, but it's not actually generating value. So we try to connect these two concepts in a kind of not vicious, but virtuous circle, yeah, by relating them to each other. No, because if you, I think this is the general problem. If we talk about impact and don't have a definition or an understanding of value that corresponds with it, we are as trapped, or we are trapped in the same, or we fall into the same trap as if the other way around, vice versa. We talk about value and have no understanding of a corresponding impact. No, it's utterly disconnected. I wonder, is this really specific to art and culture? I guess so. Or are we just anticipating what in 10, 15 or 20 years will be a matter of course in a general economy?
Yeah, just a short reflection from our research, like we sometimes got the question like, yeah, what is then the difference, for example, between like a climate, like organization fighting for climate justice and like a cultural artistic practice, like dealing with climate. And often the discussion also got into the difference between effect and affect, and like the different actually strategies, artistic strategies and methodologies that are being used by these artistic initiatives that makes it profoundly different from like the, let's say, the normal climate initiative. So for example, like artistic strategies such as subverting or embodying or like, imagining or like other forms of strategies. So I think that was something that came back from our over-affirming, exactly.
Yeah, I can just share also, I think Pierluigi Sacco has done research about this, and a couple of years ago with my previous work, we organized the conference also, Cultural Impact Now. What I learned there is that cultural actors often don't want to be affiliated with the creative industries. They say that's not culture, so there's already also a split there. And regarding, this measurement, I think this is, like I said, this is the last sector that we're trying to measure, but the cultural actors themselves don't want that often, or it's the immeasurable trying to measure it. But now with the social real estate fund, we are also trying to make a case and say, okay, to convince other stakeholders. Well, if you have an art gallery, it might, because people are there, they are inspired, they use their imagination, therefore they're more happy, and therefore they're less likely to cause nuisance on the street, and therefore you need less police capacity. You can even go even further with that measurement, but yeah, it's a territory to be researched, I think.
Yes, very, very small reflection that it's a bit like tricky to be able to the need of constantly explaining the society the value of arts and culture and spending more time on explaining why it's important instead of creating. So maybe it's like let's people, yeah, and just create and give it us the same way we understand that we need other public goods. Like, let's understand that culture is there for us.
During COVID, it was also an argument, right? Now COVID shows that it's actually valuable, but after, yeah, what changed now? I don't know.
But we're living in a moment of paradox. That it's not new. And this, I'm going to go back to the Basque Country for a minute. More than 25 years ago, I was sitting at a Christmas table, the few days before they opened the Guggenheim. It was a big, huge debate in between the parents living at my friend's parents, his brother, he was an architect, and we two young ones and stupid. Okay, we were Beavis and Butthead. And the huge paradox, it was you had to do in different positions, which they're still now present in culture, in the perception of culture. They're saying, oh, how come we're in such a dramatic state with high unemployment rates, we got hardcore violence, we are in an emergency as a territory in which we're going to lose our position. We are investing so much, which is true, into a building, horrendous at the time. No, me said. But the second point of view is from architecture. He said it's going to put Bilbao in the world's map of architecture, and we were just didn't have much of a clue. We were the general public, probably the general public. 25 years after, would we question the budget implied into the creation of Guggenheim and the change of society thanks to an infrastructure which was very crazy and bold, with a lot of questions? And is it the social return of an infrastructure like this?
Yeah, is there?
We could question. I question it.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting, like paradox, because there are a lot of studies that they say how much the Guggenheim has given revenue to local hotels, restaurants, but not to the local artists. So this is very interesting. And also I wrote a research some months ago about the unsustainable sustainability of the Guggenheim. I hope they don't listen this. I don't think so. But it's very tricky that they are marketing themselves as very, very sustainable, but still they don't pay good to their workers. So, yeah.
By the way, this is exactly what we discussed in the morning in the case study that Vikash presented about we have to trace this and regain control over these measurements.
I just wanted to add like a thought or like also a picture. I mean, one thing I said, the example is interesting, and I have, as we say in German, very dangerous half knowledge on the whole Bilbao case, but I saw one documentary about it, and I think at least there was enough critical voices in there just also, and this just brings me to our topic, how much was the infrastructural effect and how much was more the broad cultural process around it that went in for years? Because many cities tried to copy it and it never worked in the same way. So there's a lot more to it than just one building, however spectacular it is, I think. And that brings me, I mean, the question also that you then raised, like how can it be sustainable if it's not living its sustainability? I would disagree a little bit. You said earlier, one cannot be sustainable without living it. I think you can, because you cannot be sustainable, so we need to find a way, because that's the paradox we're in right now, in the linear system, trying to get out, and so we kind of have to do this trick, but I'm with you, and the picture that I'm carrying with me for a couple of years now is in the classic sustainability discourse, you have the 3 pillars, and social is there, but I always like, what is it? And in practice, it usually is really, it's I don't know, it's over hours, it's child labor or slavery, and all of these kind of things. It's all described in numbers, but it doesn't describe any of the things that we really need to make it happen, and that's culture. So for me, I came up with this picture. If one imagines these 3 pillars, then culture is the 4th dimension that weaves through all of that and goes through all of these 3 different pillars and can bring them together and then can make things happen. But without that, I think we will never make it, really. So I think, yeah, and culture is, again, also I'm not an expert in this field and coming from the way more shallow fashion industry, let's say. But yeah, just sitting here, I was saying in more quiet ways, for me also, football is also culture. And definitely in Germany, it has a strong influence on culture, how the country works even in certain degrees. So I would also try not to ignore such kind of maybe other types of culture.
No, don't take me wrong. I don't try to cancel nothing.
Yeah,
no, I will be censoring. No, hardcore. I'm probably taking a comment which Florian was pointing out. We do take for, go for it. And we do take for granted culture, that it will always exist or will always be there. But how could we relate it to defend it? The European budget, like the recent announcements, has driven a lot of alerts in different areas. Rural costs on the diverse rural development, and not just agri, where we talk about social economy. In 2 weeks' time, they cut out a full department of social economy at the European Commission without even blinking, and it's 8% of Europeans' GDP. So somebody took the perception of value saying, well, just I'll cut that out. And impact, if we talk about sustainability, or we talk about social issues, or we talk about inclusiveness, we could have a long conversation on that one and where the money's going. When we talk about what if the weapon industry would be considered green. Would they access impact funds because they're green, the green industry? Anyway, just about that one. There was a question over there. Yeah, super.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I preferred standing in the dark.
They took it away from you.
Max started it, so I was going to ask the same question. Really, is not to quibble over language, but many of you will remember when the apartheid happened or came apart, and Desmond Tutu said that the language creates the realities, right? So he talked about non-foreigners start to believe, or non-Europeans start to believe they're the other. So the language is really, really important. And for sports, so I was going to say with culture, there's scientists in this room and engineers who are undeniably creative, and we're using the word creative industries to describe a sect and a sector over here. And so I think that language we do have to be clear about, because many of you know John Newbegin, who helped define or crystallize the creative industries, himself admits that he came up with the sectors and the silos on the back of a cigarette packet, right, in the 90s, right? So I think that this language is creating sectors, and it's creating exclusion, which is why when we think people aren't accessing culture, the language is a huge part of that. So I suppose the other thing to say is, if we think about what these things do, sport creates belonging, identity, collective shared hope and vision, and that's what low fashion does as well, I hear. I would never wear it myself, but just kidding. So I just want to add to that. That's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I come from the labor movement, so I have this very big allergy to the social, because we gotta call it labor. We gotta call it, hopefully, living wage, hopefully a culture that provides jobs both in the cultural sector and the service sector and the security and the cleaning and the multi-service, right? And so for me, I think I was just in the Basque Country doing a training for the trade union lab. And a lot of the work we were talking about is like, how do we help organize restaurant workers, which are now mostly migrants, as you were mentioning, and also domestic and care work. And the importance of tourism in the city of San Sebastián and other spaces. But it is important to understand that it is also up to us to demand investment, whether it's private or public, that does have labor standards in it. That SEG or the social has to be quantifiable and has to have a labor phase and a worker phase. And that we're doing economic investment, we should provide good jobs. And it is also our drive and our values and the kind of development and culture we want, right? That is not just surviving, but it does demand the public to have very centrally, labor standards. So I just wanted to also kind of flip the switch here, because when we talk about social, we don't talk about workers' rights. And we are workers, and we are interacting and providing jobs for so many other people in tourism. But we don't want shitty tourism. We don't want exploitative tourism and gentrifying tourism. I'm Mexican, and Mexico City is going through a tremendous social like a lot of displacement. And so the question is not that we don't want a kind of tourism, but what kind of tourism? And how does culture play a role in it, in a city like mine? So I do think there is the best of both worlds, but we got to create it, from the get-go and include it and not just talk about the social. I just hate that. It's like, let's talk about workers, and let's talk about what kind of workers we're producing, both in a co-op or, in the hosteleria or in the restaurant down the street, So anyway, yes, that's me. Thanks.
Do you want to respond now, or should we go on to more comments?
Yeah, maybe we can finish with
Feel free.
I do. Okay, perfect.
But yeah, my question dovetails quite neatly to that. When you're talking about social impact investment and collectives, is there a difference between, what's the perspective, for instance, if the collective is a startup, or if it's an NGO, or if it's a not-for-profit like OpenAI? Thank you. No, but quite seriously, or charity, can you take us through what for instance, the prejudices and the potential positive aspects of that, even if it's the same collective looking to define itself as an organization? So the same.
I'm not sure if I completely understood your question. Everybody's looking really kind of at me now, waiting.
Okay,
to come up with the smartest answer in the world.
It's a long day.
Maybe it's because 7:30 by now.
Okay, it's a long day. It's a long day. But let me put it very simply.
Please.
Okay, so you have a founder. You have an idea. It's based on the frameworks that you were looking at, and the idea of it not being, say, a solo founder, but it's a collective, or, a number of different people, whatever. If the traditional idea is that's a spin out, say, from a university, or it's a classical startup. Or it could be, we've spoken about NGOs or charities, not-for-profits, or it could be like another form of a collective. What I'm saying is, how does that manifestation, forget about the business model, because that's the distribution of the income to the founders, whether that founder's a trade union or a charity. How is that viewed? Forgetting about this exactly the same business proposition. How is that viewed from social impact investors?
That's why I didn't understand the question. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it as much as I need, but it's like social impact investors are a very diverse group of people. So you don't have one sort of social impact investor. You have a whole spectrum of investors. And you have investors that say, I don't care. I do loans. So whatever is the organization that I do a loan to, as soon as I can pay it back with interest or without interest or whatever the social impact investor finds important, it can be done to an NGO. If you have a VC investor, a venture capital investor, they used to do equity. If you want to do equity, you need to have an organization that can put out shares. So an NGO cannot give out shares. So it's basically as technical as that. And I always kind of find the question how you structure your organization or how you structure an organization is basically nothing more or less than a very pragmatic decision in your mind. What works for you as an organization? Are you an organization that aims and is set up to grow and to scale fast? It's probably better to have an equity-like organization because it kind of saves you from, if shit hits the fan, it's an own legal entity. There's a lot of benefits in that. If you want to set up something like a cooperative, it doesn't make much sense to put that in a private limited company, although there's probably ways of figuring that out as well. So there's only a few kind of structures, and there's a lot of ways to work around that, and it's up to you as entrepreneur what best represents your ambitions, your values, to choose whatever kind of structure you wanna set up. And it depends on each kind of different impact investor would look differently at what kind of structure you have. Having said all that, I think most impact investors out there are investing in ventures at this moment.
Okay, super. I think we're going to wrap up here. I believe tomorrow we've got a full session on how to drive and design a fund. We've got other moments in which we're going to share specifically, and don't take me wrong, there's going to be tons of opportunities in which we could chit-chat and we could just go down deep in whatever topic you have in mind. And please do so, because this is the best part of not being in an online, but offline, and a few drinks come with it. And also there's going to be a workshop specifically in which we're going to try to drive those ingredients as an entrepreneur towards impact, and the reality comes in also. So there's going to be a lot of bridges that we have to sort of build together. They're not fully defined, and it probably is the most creative part of how to regenerate our narratives, to regenerate our tools or perception on what we have, because we care for it. We care for reality, we care for the social economy, and that understanding of impact. I want to thank you, and I believe it's the moment for a great applause for our panelists. And thanks again. And thanks to all of you, because you stayed until the very last minute. It's 7:30, it's time for a gin tonic, as a very good friend would say. Thanks very much.